this is told to the people who have no idea that the cities are being shelled by Ukraine. So they would shoot somewhere, wait for about an hour and a half till emergency services get there, medical services get there, journalists get there, and then they shoot again.
Double tap.
So they get more victims.
Welcome to another episode of Twice Told Tales podcast. With us today is Masha Lelyanova. I think I got that right. And she's joining us today from Donbass. And we're going to talk about the recent events there. So welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, currently I am in Lugansk. That's the capital city of Lugansk People's Republic that became a part of the Russian Federation after the referendum in September last year.
Is it considered an oblast in Russia, or is it considered, how does that work on a map of Russia now?
Well, it's Lugansk Oblast / Lugansk area / Lugansk People's Republic. It's all of it.
Okay. I was just curious because I hear people using. I know oblast is like state in Russian, and I wasn't.
Oh, we have different names. We have oblast, we have krai, we have different ways to call the subjects of the federation, as it is called. Okay. So we'll see when it's finalized, because obviously now it's a process. We'll see how it will end up being on the map.
Okay.
Yeah. When Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union and then Ukraine was a separate state, it was oblast. When Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics decided to become independent of Ukraine, they became People's Republics. In Russian Federation, we have republics, like Republics of Chechnya, for example, and other subjects of the Federation. So anything is possible.
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, now that you mentioned the Chechen Republic, that's a good pretext for what could happen there. So could you tell our audience about your I think we'll talk about the current events there, but I'd really like to talk a little bit about how you got to the position you are today, because our podcast, one of the things we really like to do, because we deal mostly with propaganda around Iran, is to analyze. Like, Iran is a very difficult propaganda narrative to discuss in the West because it's so highly propagandized. Russia wasn't really like that for a long time. I mean, it was during the Cold War, and then we had this long period of years where Russia was just Russia. And then about, I don't know, around 2014 or 15, it became evil again, and all the propaganda came. So now people don't really understand Russia. But Iran has always been evil since the revolution, so it's been very difficult to break through that with people. And when I heard your story that you told on another podcast, briefly about your sort of transformation from like the Western propaganda narrative to the reality-based narrative, I found that very compelling. So could you give us just a little bit of a background on how you how did you view the situation in the beginning, and how did you come to what you're doing today, and what are you doing today there?
Well, I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
A friend of mine and a journalist as well, John McDougan, took me to Donbass about a year ago, in the beginning of August, actually. Last year, we went to Donbass, and it was my first time. And after this trip, literally just a few hours after we returned to Moscow, we recorded the interview that went viral. And in this interview, he called me a liberal that he took to Donbass, and that happened, the transformation that happened. I actually never considered myself a liberal. To be honest, don't even know for sure what it means, because it's a word that can be used for pretty much anything you want. Yeah. Oh, I see the cat. Yeah, sorry. So right now, what is called a liberal, it is someone who supports generally LGBT agenda. It is someone who supports all kinds of, like, someone vegan, someone who drinks smoothies in the morning, you know, that kind of thing, and someone who's absolutely pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian, pro-Western, and so on and so forth. That has nothing to do with me, but it caught attention, and it made many people click this video, and it's what helped to make this video go viral. And that's how I actually became a little bit famous, although I never meant to be. But whatever works. Whatever works, as long as the message is delivered. So to sum it up, I had no idea, and it is absolutely my fault. I did not have an interest, and that is why I had no idea about what was happening in this region, in Donbass, since the beginning. And the beginning is when the coup happened. So end of 2013, 2014, and on. I had no idea. My sources of information were more the Western sources that, of course, pretended that nothing was happening, and that when Russia invaded, as it is called, invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022, it promoted this narrative that this was unprovoked, that it was an absolute act of horrific aggression against poor little white and fluffy Ukraine, that was absolutely blameless, that was the victim of crazy monster, aggressive, huge neighbor who has the power, who has the force, who has everything and wants to claim more territories and whatever. And I was listening to these sources. Honestly.
That had to do with the fact that you're an English translator, and so your sort of exposure to the English world came, your exposure to the world had a lot to do with Western English.
Among other things, yes. I spent a lot of time in the last, I would say, 7 years or 8 years. I spent a lot of time abroad, most of this in the United States. So since 2016 till basically beginning of this war, I spent about 7 or 8 months a year in the United States, if you combine it all together. So yeah, that could also be the reason. But the main reason is it didn't come into the focus of my attention in 2014 when the main events that started it happened. And it never came into the focus of my attention after, until the invasion began in February last year.
And how did you process that, like what you saw? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sadara. You want to say something?
Yeah.
No, let's answer that question, and then I will get. I will ask you some questions.
In the beginning, John sent me the interviews to translate, because he was going to Donbass since the beginning of the special military operation. In March, in February already, he was coming to this area, and he was talking to the people in the streets, and he wanted, and of course they answered to him in Russian, and he wanted to have the subtitles of what they were telling him, so that he would post this on his channel, which is deleted now, by the way. And he asked me to translate that. And to me, it sounded like, oh my God, I'm translating some Russian propaganda. How could it be? On the other hand, I clearly saw that these people were not acting, that they were just people on the streets, because the way they spoke, it was obvious. They were not prepared, they were nervous, they couldn't start one sentence and finish the same sentence. It was very difficult to translate them, because I had to understand what they meant to say as opposed to what they were actually saying, because they were not very good in expressing themselves, simply because they were nervous and they were not used to giving interviews. So it was clear that it wasn't fake, that it was real. And he sent me several interviews of that kind from different trips to Donbass that he made from the beginning till August, when we finally went with him to this area. And we traveled throughout the whole area, from Mariupol to Donetsk to Lugansk to Svetogorsk, which was back then in the Russian control. And I talked to all the people everywhere. I wouldn't say that I talked to thousands of people, but I can honestly say several hundreds that I talked to. And there was this absolutely common theme. And they didn't talk to me like they would talk to a person of any authority or something. They would talk to me as to the same person who is the same as they are, you know, absolutely same level. They had no reason to lie to me, no reason to pretend, no reason to, you know, say something that would cause me pain them or whatever, you know, nothing of the kind. We just talked as two equal humans, two humans who are absolutely the same, and they would share their experience. And I mean, I couldn't dismiss it. It totally changed my whole worldview. And as I said to John in this interview, the scale of lies in this Western propaganda is comparable to the scale of the atrocities of this war. It is that huge. It's just total lies. The only true things there are that there are Russia and Ukraine fighting with each other. You know?
But I think
everything else is a lie.
And that actually, the more you look into almost everything that the West does, the more you realize almost everything is a lie. And it's really, really hard for people to even get to the point where they'll even recognize it, because it's so painful to try and process that deception, because it's just like, what? So that's what I'm really asking you, is like, when you realize the lies, and I mean, just this lie, not all the other lies they tell, because let me tell you, it is endless, the lies they tell. But just this lie, like, I mean, did you respond with anger towards the people who had been telling you this, the news sources? Did you say, the BBC, I'm never going to listen to them, man? Or did you, like, how did you process that? Like, now, not every Russian trusts everything the Russian government says, but now, did you experience a revision of, like, what you can trust from the Russian government? Because now it's like, okay, well, maybe the Russian government is telling the truth about a lot of stuff. Like, how did you process that in your...
You know, it's a very interesting question. I never felt anything like anger at all, to be honest. I never really cared to process what emotion exactly I felt regarding that. What I felt was, now this war became not just the war that is happening elsewhere, you know, somewhere where it doesn't touch me. Because I could easily live in Moscow and it would never touch me. You know, I would continue my life and it would have absolutely no input or no impact on my life at all. It became my personal thing. I felt like I owe to the people of Donbass on one hand, and I also owe to the Russian people who had the same thing as I had in their minds, getting the news from the West, getting the other side, the fake side of the story. Because I know many people who are my friends, who are great people, smart, honest, hardworking, people that are amazing, but they have the same thing in their minds, and they suffer to a degree of, like, really, really, really being depressed, not being able to work, at the edge of suicide, because they think that they live in the state that is a monster,
exactly.
that all of a sudden attacks the neighboring state. So I wanted to do something to try to explain to them that all this suffering shouldn't happen, because all this suffering is happening because they are lied to, but because they are honestly believe that this is where the truth is. They're taking all this blame and all this unbearable guilt onto themselves, you know, without being able to stop it.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to. Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, you kind of answered, like, how common was this among Russians, because looking at especially the Persian-speaking propaganda that is produced by like BBC Persia or Persian or VOA Farsi and all these totally like propaganda channels in Farsi that are working 24/7 for free to like, and the target audience is Iranians. I see a lot of people, as you said, like my friends, really nice people, really smart people who are falling for that propaganda, and it makes them just live or feel that they are the most miserable people in the world and they're living in the worst place in the world. Not because they're actually experiencing it, but because it's just in their mind and they're just believing whatever they're being told. And it's unfortunately, I should say, it's kind of becoming more common. I mean, I see a lot of people waking up and like opening their eyes to the lies that they're told. But I would say like the scale of the lies or the number of the people who are falling for the propaganda every day is moving on like faster than those who are waking up to the propaganda. And it's really worrying me because, it's, as you said, like people are living a very depressed life when it's very, very easy to shift that. You just have to look at it through a different lens. It doesn't, like, you don't need to take a very difficult step or an action. It's just looking at things in a different way. So how do you deal with people like with your friends or your family or your loved ones who fall for this propaganda? Because I'm sure it's very, very sad, especially when you see your loved ones falling for it. Like, how is the everyday life between Russians who do not agree on, this kind of propaganda? Like, how do you deal with that?
It's very difficult, and I should say my friends are very stubborn people, and they're smart people, so they have no reasons to think that they could be lied to and they could be fooled like that. And also, they are not teenagers anymore. They are in their late 40s, 50s, mostly, so it's really that time of life when you don't easily accept new concepts, and you don't easily accept that something that you absolutely believe in could be an absolute lie. And I definitely experienced the loss of communication. We just don't discuss this, but because it is so huge, because Ukraine is part of us, it is a huge thing not to discuss. So we just lose a huge share of communication. I sent my videos, my interviews when Drone channel was still alive on YouTube. It's deleted now. YouTube deleted it. But back then it was still live and I could send videos to them. So I kept sending them the links, but many of them never even opened those links.
Yeah, that's true. That's the response. Yep. And you got that with COVID. People did that. Everyone did propaganda campaigns. People just they just close their eyes. They're like, I don't even want to see it. And it's because it's so painful to know that you're being lied to, I think.
Yes. It is easier just to block. No, it doesn't happen. I don't have that. Whatever. They do act like this. Really. And, one of, just as an example, every year, every spring, I go to the Far East to a rehabilitation center for the baby seals. And the director of this center is one of those people who is absolutely opposed to the war. And she was interviewed by a very prominent journalist who specifically came to the Far East to make a program or a movie about my friend, about her work with the SEALs. And this is an absolutely anti-Russian person. And she asked her horrific, in my opinion, horrific questions. In this, I mean, it was a fantastic movie. She was very caring and very accurate about the things, and very subtle about the things, but she would ask questions that sounded like truth or homeland. When you have to choose, assuming that you either have to be with your motherland, with your homeland, in the lies and aggression and whatever, or you have to refuse from your homeland and choose the truth, which West is pushing through the propaganda. It's horrendous, you know? And I was looking at her like, it's not because you are paid for this. You truly believe that this question is real. You truly believe that people are in this agenda, that they have to choose between the truth, between what is right, and between what is their homeland is doing. And she's living in the same agenda, in the same narrative. It's so difficult. It's so painful to see this. Or she would ask, what was something like also the truth, only some synonym of that, or safety, implying that if you speak the truth, which is speaking against Russia and pro-Ukrainian, you shall lose your safety. You shall go to jail in Russia or something, implying that. She asked such questions. And I talked to her like, come on, how can you even live like that? Because if I had to live in such agenda longer, I would probably kill myself, because it's impossible. Because, you know, it's in the Russian mentality, in our blood, in our DNA, to love our homeland. We are really patriots. And when instead of that, you have to live with the thought that you have to reject your homeland. I mean, it's like you have to reject your mother, you have to reject your father, you have to reject something that you absolutely love, that defines you. How do you live like this?
And for what, though? And reject for what? Like, it's the illogical that's so painful to me. And I mean, America is highly propagandized too. People don't realize this, but I think we're probably even more propagandized than any other country, because we're the people who have to okay all this stuff. And it obviously affects other people worse in physical ways, but mentally, people here are insane from the propaganda. And like in the context of what you're dealing with, and Satara, like, how would some rational person believe that a bigger country, a more powerful like coalition of countries outside, is coming to save you? Like, they don't come to save you; they come to destroy you. Nobody's like knocking on your door to give you $1 million. That doesn't happen. They come to your door to steal what you have. I just don't understand how people, and I know it has to do with soft power, it has to do with Hollywood and all that, because they think, oh, America's this land of riches where money falls off trees. They just don't watch the videos of the thousands of homeless people rotting on the streets of LA because the US doesn't support them. They put all their money into building bombs. But that doesn't matter, because the myth, the story is so powerful, and that's what's so painful to me. And I've seen it everywhere I've traveled. Like in Nepal, I had to like sit a guy down because he was just viciously at me. When I told him there are homeless people in America, he was like, that's not true. That's not true. I had to like sit him down on a computer and shatter his entire worldview, showing him photos of homeless people in America. He was like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. There aren't homeless people in America. And it's like, yeah. So anyway, I empathize fully with that. And I wish we could come up with a way of breaking through to people other than having to go through the meticulous process of face-to-face interviews and actually meeting people. But that's how I came to my realization of all the lies. I lived in Palestine for a couple years and just realized that this is everything we're told is a complete lie.
Yes.
And then I traveled to Iran, and Satara, luckily she lives in a country where the revolution is codified, so everyone there is very, very understanding of the West. But
most people, but not everyone.
Yeah, well,
sadly. Yeah, because like talking about how like the propaganda makes you reject your country or your homeland. This is very similar to what happens here, especially in the protests and everything that happened last September in Iran. This was a very new thing, that there was exactly a very strong like waiver propaganda to make people reject their homeland. Like, it's a part of your identity. How can you reject a part of your identity? So you would get people, I mean, it was a very, very small person, but I think even like, I don't know, even less than one person is way a lot for a nation to reject their nationalities. Like, there were the like World Cup, the FIFA World Cup games, and Iran was playing, and you would see people who were cheering for the US against Iran and not their country. Like, they were like celebrating the loss of their football team. How is that possible? What does it have to do with any kind of government that is ruling your country? This is a part of your identity. Or you see people like rejecting their flag because, I mean, this flag, yeah, some of the symbols changed, but this flag, the colors and everything about it is now a part of your identity, and it has been. How can you reject that? It's really sad, and it puts a lot of pressure. I mean, I remember after the US-Iran game, and we lost the game, and everybody was really sad, but there were a few people on the streets that they were like cheering, and it was only because the propaganda was telling them to do so. I mean, because you're saying, like, I mean, it's just a football game. What does it have to do with all the things that happen between Iran and the US on the realm of like politics or anything? Or we had like the national team, the football players, you know, they go for photo shooting like any other country in the World Cup. And because some of them were smiling, they received a lot of, I mean, backlash. Like, why are you smiling when your country is suffering? Like, are you not celebrating anything? Like, are you not celebrating weddings or birthdays or any parties in your life? Like, you're going to work every day during this very, very difficult times. Are you not smiling in your life at all? Like, what expectations do you have? Like, everyone was like attacking the football players because they smiled in one photo shooting for the World Cup. That's just so pathetic, and it's really depressing if you fall for it. There's nothing to be proud of. Like, you just feel you're living in a hell that you have to just find a way out of. Like, there's no way you can feel happiness in this country.
Yeah, we had the same. Like, the reaction on every post on social media or something was like, how can you smile when Ukraine is suffering so much? How can you celebrate a birthday when this is happening? How? And the moment when you say, oh, I feel so bad, I feel so horrible because this is happening, when you were trying to actually defend Ukraine, the answer was, what does it even matter that you feel depressed when our citizens are being shelled? And this is told to the people who have no idea that the cities are being shelled by Ukraine itself. Okay? So it's just that.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how because you were saying you've now taken this on as a cause. Like, what is it you do? I've heard you talk about this, and like about your mission trips there with your with supplies. Could you tell us about that and how it's affecting people on the ground, and what you've seen, but how you've seen these shipments change people's lives?
Well, it's two main objectives. Each one of them is equally important. One of them is bringing the humanitarian aid to people, because we have a small van, which is called UAZ, or bukhanka, because it looks like a loaf of bread. Bukhanka is a loaf of bread in Russian. And it absolutely looks like a loaf of bread on wheels. So we load it with stuff, and it's a great vehicle for off-road, so for bad roads. The thing is, Ukraine never bothered to invest into pretty much anything here in terms of infrastructure or whatever. So the roads are whatever they managed to remain since the Soviet Union collapsed. Many roads are fixed by the Russian Federation now, but where we go are small villages, small places where the roads are not fixed just yet. And those people who stayed there for whatever reasons, who couldn't flee to any shelters, to any other safer area, they stay there. I mean, it could be different reasons. They could have a lot of animals that they can't take with them. They can have, for example, old parents that are having health issues and they are not really movable. I mean, whatever. Many of them just decide to stay there because this is my home. I'm not leaving my house. It's going to be looted. It's going to be shelled. It's going to be whatever as long as I'm in my house. We have a saying at home, even the walls protect you. Even the walls help you. So they decide to stay at home. I mean, I don't judge them. Whatever their reasoning is. And they need food. They need water. They need hygienic things, toilet papers, I don't know, what detergents, deodorants. They need this basic stuff that is so basic that we don't even think about it because it's just an everyday thing that you can always get, but they can't. The stores are not working anymore. You know, it has to be delivered. Yeah. And it's difficult to get there because nobody goes there. So we go and we bring that stuff. How does it change their life? Well, after they get a package of our supplies, they have, I don't know, some food for the next few days. They have toilet paper for the next few days. They have something to wash their clothes with. They have, I don't know, hygienic pads for their women. You know, it's just that. How does it change their life? Just on an everyday basis, they have some basic stuff that makes their life bearable.
But it probably also does something for their spirit too. I mean, because they're totally abandoned, right? They're abandoned by.
Well, we always offer. We can take you out of here for free. We have now that we have unloaded all the humanitarian aid that we brought. We have empty bukhanka. Take your stuff, whatever you want to take. Get into this bukhanka, and we shall drive you out of here into whatever place from Donbass till Moscow. Or till St. Petersburg, any town you choose. Here's the space for you. We're not going to charge you. Get out. Mm-hmm. And they just say, no, we stay. And I respect that. I honestly do not understand it. I wouldn't stay. I wouldn't stay. I would say, I go. But they stay. And each one of them has their own reasoning that is stronger than the safety instinct, apparently. It is just, it's my home, it's my land. I didn't leave in 2014 when shelling started. I'm not leaving now. It's fantastic stubbornness. Many of them, they stay honestly because of animals. Like, everybody left, and now I have all the neighbors' cats and dogs to take care about. How am I going to leave them? Seriously, it's like probably 90% of explanations why they stay.
Wow, that is.
It's just insane.
You should definitely encourage one of the journalists out there to make a documentary about that. That is a selling. That is a real seller of a story about the people.
It's for real. It's like we have a shelter near Lugansk. They have about 500 cats, and I don't know. I can't tell on top of my head how many dogs. They just bring from all the places that are being liberated by Russia. They get them there. You know, just because, I mean, okay, they are not people, but they are living creatures who need help. So they stay.
Yeah.
You know, it's just amazing what people do.
Yeah. So what you said, there were two objectives. So one is taking people's supplies, and what's the other one?
Yeah, that's one objective. The other equally important objective is informational. We record these stories. We record the real evidence. People tell us who really shells their villages, who really shells their towns. They know from where the rockets fly to bomb the civilian houses, the civilian hospitals, the civilian bus stops, the civilian infrastructure. It has nothing to do with the military. They know for sure who is doing it. And it is not Russia. It is Ukraine. And they're telling this time and time and time again. It is now 10th year already, you know, that it has been happening. And this truth must be told. It is terrorist acts against civilians that has been happening for now more than 9 years that are committed by Ukraine, that is totally not white and fluffy and totally deserved what is being done to it now. Because it has to be eradicated.
Yeah, totally. I agree. That was the most traumatized I've ever been watching the footage of what the Ukraine Nazis did back in 2013. The shellings they did of the apartment buildings there, where you just had like grandmas who had their like intestines hanging out and they were crawling along the sidewalks. I mean, it's just like the worst things I've ever seen. I thought it took me so long to recover from seeing those. And the most of the trauma was that America was behind it, and the American people didn't care. It really, really sticks with me now.
Because they don't realize America has never been shelled. America has no idea what war is. America has no idea what it's like to survive under the shellings, what it is at all. They have no clue. They do it in the other territories. They do it on the other continents. And it's like, it's a movie. It's something. And that's even a movie that I don't have to watch if I don't feel like it.
Exactly.
That's the American attitude. It's
and
somewhere else.
That's the worst part, is they say Nazis are so bad, and then they take all the credit for Russia for fighting the Nazis in World War II. They say America won that when it was Russia who won that war, and America took the credit for it, fighting the Nazis. And now they're funding Nazis and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but Nazis in this case, and they're saying, like Nazis are so bad. Yes. Yeah,
that is some sort of, I don't know, bipolar disorder in the minds of people.
It's hard. It's hard, man, to deal with the reality here. But you hang out with some Americans there, so I think you probably understand that trauma somewhat. So how could people help support you in this? I know you have a Buy Me a Coffee. We'll put that link in the description.
Yes. I have a Telegram channel, and I shall send you a link for it. And the reason I say it, it's not even to promote it, but to report. I have a pinned message there where I diligently put absolutely every incoming amount and every expense.
That's great.
I have a file. It's on Google Sheets, and it's accessible to anyone who wants to see what is going on, who wants to see how the funds are spent. It is now my 12th time that I come to Donbass since August last year, and each time I bring something. You know, it's something. It's either, of course, yeah. So. Russians donate directly to my bank card because it's easy. In Russia, we have a Sberbank. It's like the biggest bank ever, the biggest one in all of them that we have in Russia. And it's possible for them to donate to the card directly. For the anyone who's outside, so for all the foreigners, there's Buy Me a Coffee link. And Mike Jones, it's two of them, Mark Dugan and Mike Jones, with whom we do this. So Mike Jones has a way of transferring this money into Russia, because once the money gets into Buy Me a Coffee account, it directly goes to Mike's account. Yeah,
that's great. That's
yeah.
Great.
So he managed to set it up, and in my Telegram channel, in this pinned message, anyone could see how the funds are being spent. And it's just, it is as transparent as I can only be, so that people would see that it is really used for Donbass, for coming here, for bringing help, and that it's not anything that is fake, or that it is not a scam or whatever.
It's definitely the most transparent way that anyone can donate to offering aid to Donbass that I've seen. I mean, Texas, what's his name? Bentley?
Russell Bentley. Yeah.
Russell Bentley has a pretty good organization too. But I think, so I think Gray Zone covered him for once. So do you know him? Are you connected with him?
Yes, we met with him in person in Moscow a couple of times.
But he's still doing okay with his cats, because he also has cats.
Everybody has cats these days. I hope.
Yeah, that's the only way to keep saying.
Yeah, I haven't. That's true. That's what keeps us sane and mentally balanced. They are the best healers in the world. Last time I saw Russell Bentley, that was in Moscow in winter.
Okay.
I hope he's fine. Yeah.
Well, I guess now we can just touch on the latest, what's the latest shelling that happened yesterday.
Yes.
You posted a video from someone who was there, and it was a HIMARS attack, which the important context for that is that when HIMARS are launched, they have to go through an okaying process through the U.S. So this is the U.S. signing off on the bombing of a civilian center where there is no military at all. Nothing military. There's no weapons factories. They bombed a bus with civilians. So could you tell us about that? Because
a friend of ours specifically went to the area where the shelling happened and filmed the result, the burnt bus, the burnt car, the holes in the road that the rockets left. It's true that no HIMARS rocket or no Storm Shadow rocket, for that matter, fly into any direction without getting an okay from the Western overlords, let's put it this way. So they know, and this is a very precise weapon. So it's not like you can hit something by mistake. They know exactly where they shoot.
Yeah.
Ukraine also has another interesting modus operandi, if you will. They would shoot somewhere, wait for about an hour and a half till emergency services get there, medical services get there, journalists get there, and then they shoot again.
Double tap.
So they get more victims.
The U.S. did that a lot in Iraq too, so that's not. Yes. It's not just. It's a very dirty tactic.
Yes, and it's being used all the time.
Like that footage that Julian Assange is basically being held hostage for publishing was an example of that. I mean, there were the they just came in and shot up all the journalists and medical staff that came to respond to another event. So that's classic evil empire, great Satan activities where you just you try and kill the first responders.
True that. It's just pure genocide. They kill people because they can.
Did that happen in this case? Was there a double tap? Was there a second round of bombings that happened?
In this case, yesterday, no. But there are plenty of such cases.
Yeah.
Just plenty. Yeah.
And how many people officially died in this one? Was it 2?
As far as I know, 4.
4, and then there were like 8 or so that injured?
11 injured. Yes.
11. Okay.
Yes, that's the latest information because it changes with time. You know, they find more, and some people who were considered just injured later die in the hospital, so it gets updated.
Yeah, and as you said, this is a highly specific weapon. It had to be okayed by the U.S., and it hit in like a
center of Donetsk
area, in the central area. It's like you couldn't be more obvious that you're trying to kill civilians. Like that was meant.
But you please understand, it happens every day, all the time. I can send you. There is an organization which is called Joint Center for Control and Coordination. There is such organization in DPR, in Donetsk People's Republics, and in LPR, in Lugansk People's Republic. And they only register these shellings that are done to the civilians. So whatever refers to the military objects doesn't get into the statistics. And there's a Telegram channel for both Lugansk and Donetsk Joint Center for Control and Coordination. And it's just pure facts. So many rockets from that area to that area, such and such rockets at such and such time. And it's every few minutes.
Wow.
And I can send you the link.
Yeah,
and you can sign up to this Telegram channel and just see this. It's just the facts. Like 5 rockets from Mariinka to such and such district of Donetsk, HIMARS. 3 rockets, like at, I don't know, 12:10, 12:50, 2 rockets from Avdiivka to such and such district of Donetsk. Okay, 1:15, 1:20, 2:50, all the time, every day.
And that was going on before this this current, whatever you want to call it, war, special military operation.
It's from 2014.
Exactly, and that's what people in the West have been. Their brains have been like, you know, Men in Black zapped. It's like they'd have no ability to remember or realize or even just search for news articles.
Russian propaganda. Don't look into that. It's all Russian propaganda.
Because like when that happens for 14 years and you have bombs just bombing civilian apartment, I mean, at some point, your population in Russia has to be so agitated to go do something. And then when the Ukraine says, "Oh, we're going to put nuclear weapons here," then it's just like, all right. I mean, it's obvious that the West was trying to get this thing started with whatever they could poke Russia with and destroy civilian lives, and then we're all supposed to believe this is a Russian imperialism. Russia wants to. Oh my God, it's just so sad. But I really appreciate that you're doing what you're doing. It's great. I don't know, Satara, did you have any more questions or?
No, that's about it. Thank you so much.
All right. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of Twice Told Tales podcast. Be sure to check out all the links in the description. And I highly recommend you scroll back in Masha's Telegram and check out all of her seal videos. She has all these very cute seals that she worked with and all of her kitten content. It's a great channel for stress relaxation as well as being outraged about the war. So it's kind of like a good mix, good yin yang. So everyone check that out and be sure to support her. Buy me a coffee, which is actually buy me support for buy me more stuff to take to Donetsk. I like that use of that website. So see you again next time.